G'day, and welcome to the AOS Coach sneak peek into the 2022 version of the Fyreslayers Battletome. Now, Games Workshop were kind enough to send this to me in advance. However, I'm under no obligation to do this review, nor will they see this content before it goes on YouTube. Now, in this video, I'm going to focus on the Fyreslayers allegiance abilities and share some of the initial observations with you around match play. Now, to avoid making this video too long, I have separated the key war scroll changes, the new battle tactics, the grand strategies into another video that we're premiering right after this. Now, this book is chock full of narrative, art, Path to Glory rules, some really cool detailed maps around the Great Parch of Akshi, as well as you get the unique code for you to unlock these rules in the AOS app. Fyreslayers armies will gain an expanded set of faction rules, including a new heroic action and a new command ability, while you get to still continue to enjoy your Urgold runes, as well as the sub-allegiances through the lodges, as well as some extra rules through the Grimwrath Oaths. You've retained the 4 sub-factions to help you customize your force, and it will unlock Battleline Options, although the sub-faction abilities have changed. I'll look at those rules a little later in this video. You've gained a new command ability to be used by your heroes called Fierce Counterattack. You can use this command ability at the start of the enemy combat phase. Now, the unit that receives the command must be an Auric Hearthguard, a Hearthguard Berserker unit, or a Volkite Berserker unit, and it must be within 3 inches of an enemy unit that made a charge move in the same turn, but also not within 3 inches of an enemy that had not made a charge move. So if it was already stuck into combat and then another unit charged you, you wouldn't be able to use this command ability. But if your unit of Volkite Berserkers were not in combat and then a unit charged you in that particular turn, you could absolutely use the Fierce Counterattack. Now, should you apply the Fierce Counterattack rules, you would essentially provide a first strike ability to that unit until the end of the phase. And the one thing that you need to know about with Fierce Counterattack is a particular unit cannot receive this command ability more than once per battle. So should you have multiple units of Hearthguard Berserkers, you'd have to spread it around across the board, but no particular unit could receive it more than once in the game. Now, this will be an absolutely handy ability to interrupt your opponent's combat sequence, and it'll obviously help you fight first to reduce the amount of incoming damage. Instead of using heroic leadership, willpower, recovery, or finest hour, you will have the access to a new heroic action called the Blaze of Fury. Now, the Blaze of Fury allows you to pick one friendly Fyreslayers hero, and until the end of the turn, the enhanced effect of the Urgold rune that was activated will be applied to the hero, regardless of the activation roll. So you can't carry out this heroic action more than once on the same hero. Obviously, you can apply it on multiple heroes, but not one particular hero. So if you were in the heat of the battle, for example, and you really needed that enhanced version of Fiery Determination, or maybe you really needed, Awakened Steele, and you didn't roll that 6, this is that really handy guarantee for a particular hero. Maybe it's for that Runefather or Magmadroth, or maybe it's a Grimwrath Berserker that really needed Awakened Steele. It obviously wouldn't apply to the whole faction if you didn't roll the enhanced number, but it's still a great guarantee for someone, especially if you're going more combat focused and setting up a particular battle tactic. I am teasing you a little bit because I haven't shown you the Urgold, and I'll get to that right after I get through the Grimwrath Oaths. Now, if you haven't seen Broken Realms Be'lakor, there was some additional Grimwrath Oaths being added for your Grimwrath Berserkers. So if you've seen this already, you'll just know that it's moved from this book into your Battletome. And essentially, I don't think any of it's changed, to be brutally honest. So should you have a Grimwrath Berserker and Grimwrath Berserker only, at the start of the first battle round for each of your Grimwrath Berserkers, you get to choose one of 6 oaths to apply in the game, and that's going to apply for the whole game, so you don't change it every round like your Urgold. If you have multiple Grimwraths, you can't double up on the same oath, so keep that in mind if you have multiple Grimwraths. Now, there is a bunch of interesting options depending on how you want to use your Grimmy in battle. You might want to go for an offensive build, and you could do some mortal wounds on an unmodified 6 to hit. You could be going for a +1 to hit and +1 to wound if it's within 12 inches of a friendly allied unit. And I think there's some interesting combinations and some abilities with allied units, specifically those Duarden allies, whether you're going in Caradhran Overlords or maybe Cities of Sigmar Duarden. If you want to go more of a defensive style of build, then there's some interesting Royal Retinue abilities that can come into play here. But if you want to build a more defensive Grimmy, you could be getting a 6-up ward, or it gets a 5-up ward, a slight little boost, if it happens to be within 3 inches of the enemy, which is clearly where you want to be getting your Grimwrath Berserker. You want him in the thick of combat, so boosting it up to a 5 will be really nice. Or alternatively, it could be a retinue for your Rune Father or your Rune Son, and we'll talk a bit more about retinues in the coming parts of the video. If you were looking for a more reliable build for your Grimmy, you might want to apply a run and charge ability, as well as it gives you a reroll to the run and the charge roll, which is a wonderful independent unit should you want to be getting more flexibility and more reliability as it's advancing up the table. The good news for you people who are worried about the Urgold runes being changed, the good news is that there hasn't been a lot of fundamental changes, and more importantly, you still get the enhanced effects if you roll a 6. If you're unfamiliar with the Allegiance ability, at the start of the hero phase, you get to pick one of 6 Urgold runes that you can activate. Now, each of these runes can only be activated once, so you'll need to really think about your sequences and choose wisely. So once you've picked one, you've picked it. Now, once you've activated that Urgold rune, you roll a dice, just 1d6, and on a roll of a 1 to a 5, you just get to apply the standard effects on your whole army. That's keyworded Fyreslayers. Now, if you happen to roll a 6, what happens is you get to use the enhanced effects as well as the standard effect, so it stacks. Only if you roll that 6. You get to choose from the Rune of Fury, which adds +1 to melee hit rolls, and should you roll the enhanced effect, you'd also get +1 to melee weapon attacks for Fyreslayers, which is a pretty nice ability. The Rune of Farsight adds +1 to hit rolls for your Fire Steel throwing axes, and should you roll that enhanced effect, you'll get +1 to your wound rolls for those throwing axes. So a lot more reliability for something that almost all of your models are going to have. The Rune of Relentless Zeal is going to add +2 to the movement characteristic, and should you roll an enhanced effect, you would also get +2 to the charge roll. The Rune of Awakened Steel would improve the rend characteristic of melee weapons by 1, and should you roll the enhanced effect, it would make a bonus of rend 2. So you'd actually get an extra point of rend on top of that. So, really imagine your Rune Father or Magmadroth with rend 3 doing flat 3 damage through the enhanced rune. So, an additional +2 to rend if you roll the enhanced one is nothing to sneeze at. The Rune of Searing Heat will do mortal wounds in addition to the regular damage for each unmodified 6 to wound, and the enhanced effect would then trigger mortal wounds on a 2+ for units that are within 3 inches when activated. The final one that you can choose from is the Rune of Fiery Determination. That would give all Fyreslayers models a 6-up ward, and should you happen to roll that enhanced effect, it would actually boost it to a 5-up for the heroes. Only the heroes, not your troops. So having that 5-up ward would be, sensational, especially if you're going to use your heroic action to get that boost. All these runes have great use in the game depending on the situation, but really the key is going to come down to you pulling down the right rune when you need it, or getting into the game and getting into the thick of the game and having the right runes available to you when you need them. So good updates, but more importantly, didn't modify anything that I know you were concerned about losing. I previously mentioned that you get to keep all 4 lodges between the books. So if you are familiar with Vostarg and Gravefire and Lofnir and Hemdar, you would recognize these names from the previous book. But what you will notice is that the abilities have changed, and you are no longer locked into your first artifact or your command trait. If you look at the old book, it would give you a command trait, and it would say that your first artifact is X. So the good news is that this is all removed. 3rd edition books no longer have artifacts and command traits locked to a sub-faction. So you're going to have a lot more flexibility when I show you the command traits as well as the artifacts. So the 4 options available here, one is Vostarg. So should you take Vostarg, you would get to add 1 to the wound rolls and 1 to the hit rolls for attacks made by melee weapons by friendly Vostarg, Volkite, Berserker units that made the charge move in the same turn. So very much a boost that is only coming into play if your Volkite Berserkers, 1, you got to build around Volkites, but 2, you're really building around getting the charge. So keep that in mind if you're going to go Vostarg, as well as think about those rune tokens and getting those pluses to move and hopefully the pluses to charge. Greyfeed is going to add +1 to the wound characteristic of friendly heroes that don't have a mount. So nothing for your Magmadroths, unfortunately, but all your little foot troop heroes will get +1 wound characteristic, will be quite nice. But in addition to all of that, you'll get 2 extra artifacts to give them. So you won't need to rely on a battalion to get an extra artifact, or at least if you did go Warlord Battalion, you could choose something completely different like a prayer or whatever it might be. And you get to give them to 2 heroes that aren't on a mount. So really focused around the minor support troops or the heroes on foot as opposed to Magmadroth. Lofnir is going to add +2 to the wound characteristic for friendly Lofnir Magmadroth. So really, a reverse of what we just spoke about. So this one is very much focusing on Magmadroths, and you'll see when we get to your battle line options, Lofnir will double down on those Magmadroths. But hey, in addition to all of that, you get to pick 3 Lofnir Magmadroths units that can be given a different mount trait instead of only 1. So if you're looking for multiple mount traits, you're gonna get some extras from Lofnir, which is pretty nice. Now with Hemdar, if a friendly Hemdar unit wholly within enemy territory or wholly within 12 inches of an objective, should they fail a battle shock test, you get to halve the amount of models that flee. Now, when I looked over these, I like 3 of the 4 options, and probably to no surprise to anybody, Hemdar is probably my least favorite. Now, I'd rather not focus my ability on tying up to essentially losing models to battle shock. I'm not planning to have battle shocks, and I'd rather not get a boost or a benefit from battle shock. I'd rather build around something much more in my control. However, when we get to battle line options, that may change for you. Vostarg is a clear winner when you want to build around Volkite Berserkers, especially you might want to double reinforce or at least single reinforce this block of troops. And you're going to bring down your hit and your wound to 2 up. So you'll be hitting on 2s, wounding on 2s if you charge. You'll also gain a 3rd attack per model using the Whirlwind of Destruction ability that's on their War Scroll. Now, Greyfeed works nicely if you're leaning towards your other troop options. You want to have a bit more of a mixed force between various troops, and you want to have a few extra foot troops to support them, like little minor heroes to support them. That could be a nice little mixed arms force. And if you're someone like me who loves their monsters, you've probably been waiting a long time to run around with, lots of Magmadroths. You've been seeing Seraphon with Thunder Lizards saying, "Where's my turn?" Well, Lofnir is especially going to help you because it unlocks your battle line option with Magmadroths, as well as gives you some extra boost like +2 to the wound characteristic and some additional mount traits. Speaking of which, there are 2 standard battle line options across the entire faction, and that is Volkite Berserkers and Volkite Berserkers. That's not a joke. There is Volkite Berserkers with hand axes, and there are Volkite Berserkers with sling shields. If you have not seen Fury of the Deep and you didn't watch my Fury of the Deep preview, you may not know that this unit was split into 2, and there are 2 different War Scrolls for your Volkite Berserkers, and there are different points for them. So the Sling Shields and the Fire Steel Hand Axes do have a different points value. In addition to your Volkite Berserkers, there are 3 extra battle line options to choose from. If you take the Lofnir sub-faction, it's going to unlock the Auric Rune Sun on Magmadroth as your battle line. Now, you can't reinforce them, and it is only for the Rune Sun variety as a battle line. You obviously can still take your Rune Smiter and your Rune Father on Magmadroth, but it's only the Rune Sun on Magmadroth that becomes battle line. So You can take one or two of those other ones to be your primary heroes, your primary supports, and have a couple of Magmadroths with your Rune Sun on top to be your battle line. Happy days, you're at 2k, run around and burninate with all the lava. Your Auric Hearthguard become battle line in Humdar, or if your general is a Fyreslayer priest. So if you want to build around the Auric Hearthguard, probably I would rather build around like a Rune Smiter or a Rune Master to be the general instead if I wanted to unlock Hearthguard. But maybe there's something in Humdar that I'm not seeing, but maybe they will kind of work nicely with the Flamekeeper, for example, the new Fury the Deep hero. What likely will be the most common battle line options in Fyreslayers will be those Hearthguard Berserkers, because there's a good chance that your general will be a Rune Father. Now, these are all good options depending on what your style might be. I personally hope that I'll see lots of Rune Sun Magmadroths running around, taking advantage of the monster bonuses while we're in the Gurish Heartlands. So now that your command traits aren't locked to your lodges like they were in the past, we can explore some more of these. And there are 7 new command traits for your general, and 4 of them are going to be for your Auric Rune Father or your Rune Sun. And then another 3 will be for anyone who's a priest. Now, this is not story time with the coach, so I'm not going to go through every little piece here. You can read it on the screen. I'll call out some of my favorites. Certainly, I love the idea of bringing in Kharadron Overlords or Cities of Sigmar, specifically the Duarden troops. And that will give me access to using my Urgold, using the leader of the Duarden Hall. I think it is. Jeez. Lucky I'm not a Duarden player, because I would butcher all of the names. The Spirit of Grimnir is probably my favorite of the command traits, because it allows me to increase the chances of getting Urgold, specifically the enhanced Urgold, by going to a 5 instead of a 6. So it really becomes 1 in 3 as opposed to 1 in 6, or was it 16% or whatever it might be. Fury of the Fyreslayer is going to give you +1 to charge as a bubble within 18 inches of the general. That you can obviously combine with the +2 to the move from the rune, as well as, getting some real good speed to the army that you're sorely lacking, especially if you happen to roll the enhanced effect and you happen to get +2 to the charge, +1 from this. Yeah, you got some speedy Duarden coming at you. You've got your Ashbeard that's going to give an extra prayer to choose from, which isn't too bad. And the Master Priest will allow you to reactivate one of the Urgolds that you've already used. That's probably my favorite. So if you've spent one of the Urgolds and you'd love to use the same ability more than once, Master Priest is going to be the one for you. But it would mean a priest would have to be your general, which would obviously change with your what your battle line options could be. So some pros and cons on either side. When it comes to your artifacts, there are 10 artifacts of power, split between 4 for the Rune Father and the Rune Sun, 3 for the priests, and then 3 for just any Fyreslayers hero, not specific to a keyword other than obviously Fyreslayers. The Axe of Grimnir for your Rune Father or Rune Sun would improve the rend by 1, as well as give you an extra point of damage for one of the melee weapons. Very nice when you consider the Urgold as well, that would improve the rend characteristic even further if you pull that one particular Urgold rune down. Alternatively, for your Rune Father or Rune Sun, there is the Master Rune of Unbreakable Resolve that's going to give you a once per battle 3-up ward save. Very tasty, especially if you think about the shooting meta and the mortal wounds being thrown around. Having that, long strikes looking at you in turn 1, wanting to do a hero phase shot, you can pull out that 3-up ward, and probably delay or at least save your hero a little longer. The Droth Helm on a Rune Smiter on Magmadroth would be a great support piece for those Magmadroth focused fourths, because it's going to give you +1 to wound on the claw and horn attacks. So that would give you 6 attacks if obviously it's unwounded, but you'd be hitting on 3s, wounding on 2s, rend 1 for 2 damage. And this is before, again, you apply your Urgold rune, or you start looking at things like all that attack. You can bring that down easily to 2 and 2, but I really like that one. You've got the Nulcinian icon, which is for battlesmiths only. and that will give you a 12-inch bubble to ignore spells and endless spells on a 4-up. Not too bad. And then finally, there is the Demon Slayer, which is going to deny your opponent a ward save, which would be an awesome artifact to put on that Grimwrath Berserker, run it up the board, find that tank hero that has a very good armor save and a really good ward save, and just cut through it like sliced butter. Absolutely love that when you stack the Rend as well. There are 3 mount traits for your Magmadroths. You could either do 3 additional mortal wounds if you do a monstrous rampage stomp. You could do 5 guaranteed attacks from the roaring firestorm shooting attack, or you could reduce the amount of damage incoming to you by 1. So that's to a minimum of 1. Now, I personally love the Flame Scale Youngblood in a world where there is no Hunters of the Heartland. Unfortunately, that world currently exists where, I'd love to do a stomp and do up to 6 mortal wounds with a stomp. However, right now, I'd probably say reducing the damage by 1 would be my favorite mount trait. You've got access to 4 solid prayers. Prayer of Ash is a nice little debuff that will apply a -1 to wound penalty to attacks being made to one of the Fyreslayers units within 18 inches. So find that unit, apply the prayer down, the Prayer of Ash, and then any incoming attacks that go into that particular unit will be -1 to wound. Ember Storm is probably my favorite due to the versatility, because you get to apply it on either Hearthguard Berserkers or Volkite Berserkers, and what happens is you get to pick one within 18 inches, and it will allow that unit to run and charge. And think about some of the charge boosts that we've already talked about in this video. You're starting to see a trend emerging and seeing where you might want to focus one of your builds on. Prayer of Grimnir is going to tool up one of your heroes without a mount, and it's going to allow them to fight in the hero phase so long as they're within 3 inches of an enemy. Fighting in the hero phase is always a good ability, especially because they can't put up all that defense because it's only applicable in the combat or in the shooting phase. So nice little way to get around some of those boosts. And finally, you've got the Wrath of Vultrix, which focuses on the buffs on a Magmadroth. So it's going to essentially let you fight at the top of the damage profile. So should your Magmadroth be wounded, you might want to throw this prayer down, and where the differences really lie comes down to the amount of attacks it makes with its claws and horns, and as well as the dice roll when you are trying to do damage with that roaring firestorm. There are some also minor differences with movement, but I guess in the thick of the battle when you need it, probably it's going to be the claws and horns and the roaring firestorm that you really want to get down to the best possible to, I guess, do the most damage. And finally, you've got the Magmic Battleforge, which is the terrain feature that if you've been playing 3rd edition Fyreslayers already, you will literally find no change at all. I could not find a single change through the War Scroll that was posted on Warhammer Community. If you are new to Fyreslayers, or if you are picking them back up for the first time in 3rd edition, I'll leave them here on screen, but you can find it on Warhammer Community in the FAQs. It literally hasn't changed. It is what it is. So at an allegiance level, there is some really interesting options presented in the Battletome. However, I know anyone who's watched the Fury of the Deep preview, I know you were disappointed with some of the bodyguard wards, that you previously enjoyed. There was Fyreslayers were all about durability. Back in the day, it was always really tough to pull down a Fyreslayers army. And I think generally you probably found that you have dropped that a little bit. And to be honest with you, I actually don't mind that, because much like the redesign of Nurgle, I never liked fast Nurgle because it felt weird to me. And I know this is a different faction, but when I look at Fyreslayers, I think of the Slayer. I don't think of a durable hero. I think about a killy hero and killy troops. And I hope when we look at the allegiance abilities and we get to the next video, which is all about the War Scroll changes, the focus really is more on the killy side, not the durability side, which always felt really weird to me for Fyreslayers. But hey, look, there's plenty of people who probably will look at this and be really excited and happy that the Urgold mechanics didn't really change too much. I know there were plenty of people who were worried that this would be a change, especially around the enhanced effects. I really liked the Fyreslayers customized heroic action. I also like the command ability as well. I think you'll find uses for them during your game, and you'll be happy that you got them. Now, while you've always had the ability to make Auric Hearthguard and Hearthguard Berserkers battle line through a condition, it's nice to see there are other options opening up, like Magmadroths. You know, it's been a long time since I saw more than one Magmadroth on the table. It was always about the race on bodies, and one of the things that has hurt Fyreslayers through 3rd edition is that you're on big bases, you traditionally have short ranges on your weapons, it's hard to get the most out of your troops because of coherency. I think having Magmadroths and having more killy, durable Magmadroths, because they weren't really a big threat back in the day. I think you'll find that the War Scroll updates to come will put your Magmadroth in a much better position, and you'll feel more confident to put them on the table. Personally, I would have loved to have seen a non-hero version of a Magmadroth, like some wild Magmadroth without a rider, but hey, maybe it's in a White Dwarf, or maybe it's in the next tome. You know, give it to me, G-Dubs. I would love a wild Magmadroth. I think the enhancements are rich. You've got plenty of cool command traits, artifacts, mount traits, prayers. I think you'll find something easy that will suit your style, and depending on, again, what you want to build around, it's hard to call out what is great, what's not great. It's all going to be sub-faction and build faction dependent. And as I previously mentioned, there will be an extra video that will follow this up immediately. If you're watching this kind of on its premiere, that will talk through the War Scroll changes that's happened in Fyreslayers, as well as the new match play rules like Grand Strategy and Battle Tactics. Once this book receives its FAQ, which is usually around the 4 to 5 week mark, I will organize some discussions with some master Fyreslayers players so we can look at the new rules and look at the way that they're thinking about their lists and kind of making the most of the new rules. But in the meantime, I would love to hear from you in the comment section on what you think about the Fyreslayers Allegiance abilities. Was there any enhancements that really stood out for you? Is there any of the sub-factions, or even anything that's come up from this video that you really like, or some things that maybe you had in the old book that you're disappointed to lose? Either way, leave it in the comments. I'd be curious to hear from you. I'm not personally a Fyreslayers player, so I would always love to hear your insights on the faction. Thanks for sticking around until the end. I hope you found that video interesting and you walked away with a few new ideas. If you did, I would appreciate it if you hit like on the video, as well as left me a comment. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section below. The conversation will continue over on Discord, so links down below in the episode description if you want to join the Discord and continue the Age of Sigmar conversation. I want to give a massive shout out as well to these absolute bloody legends, these champions who have continued to support me through Patreon or YouTube members. That is going directly into supporting the maintenance and the growth of this channel. So thank you very much, guys. Much appreciated. And until next time, roll more sixes.